Today we're going to talk about Trump accomplishing his strategy of flooding the zone, and more importantly, how Democrats overcome it. And I've got two interviews this week. I speak with Pod Save America's Tommy Vietor about his surprise appearance on Fox News' Jesse Watters show, and I'm joined by former Obama ethics czar Norm Eisen to discuss him filing the very first lawsuit against Trump. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. The fact that we already knew Trump was going to engage in a strategy of flooding the zone doesn't make it any less startling when it actually happens. Within just days of him taking office, he's carried out what effectively amounts to a blitzkrieg of extremism taken right from Project 2025. For example, he withdrew the U.S. from the Paris Climate Agreement, making the U.S. the only country besides Iran, Libya, and Yemen to not be involved. He withdrew the U.S. from the World Health Organization. He unconstitutionally tried to end birthright citizenship, which is a bedrock American principle and in the Constitution. He rescinded executive orders that were issued by President Biden to lower prescription drug costs. He pardoned January 6 insurrectionists and is now considering inviting them into the White House. He revoked the Equal Employment Opportunity Executive Order of 1965, which prohibited employment discrimination in federal hiring based on race, religion, and gender, essentially rolling back 60 years of progress on civil rights. He's ordered health agencies to stop warning Americans about bird flu and to halt publication of scientific reports, all as egg prices are skyrocketing right now. And most recently, he fired 17 inspectors general, despite it being illegal to do so without cause and without 30 days notice to Congress. And if all of that feels like an insurmountable amount of shit being thrown at us, that is by design. That is the point. The point isn't just the stuff. It's also leaving the opposition, leaving the Democrats feeling disheartened and disillusioned and discouraged. And to make us numb, by the way, so that as this continues on, it actually takes on a sense of normalization. Voting rights attorney Mark Elias put it pretty perfectly when I spoke to him in the aftermath of the Friday night massacre that was him firing all those inspectors general.
That shouldn't surprise you because Donald Trump is a lawless president. And Donald Trump and his administration want to be lawless. In other words, they could do it the other way. And Lord knows Republicans in Congress wouldn't have the spine or backbone to stand up to him. But he wants to force illegal and compromised processes from the get-go, because he wants to set that precedent that he can show that he can get away with anything and that Republicans won't back him down. And look, that's why I connect this very much so to what we saw with Pete Hegseth. Right? Why did he lead with Pete Hegseth? Because he wants to show that he can make Republicans vote for anyone. If he can make them vote for Pete Hegseth, why did he fire this more than a dozen inspectors general? Because again, he wants to show that he's in charge and that Republicans like Senator Grassley, who has proclaimed for years and years how he's the protector of inspector generals, that nobody's going to stand up to him.
So the strategy by Trump is clear. Flood the zone, instill a sense of dominance, and normalize his abuse. So how do we respond? First off, I should note that from the minority, there's very little practically speaking that we'll be able to do. And so our response has to rely on messaging. And by the way, for those who doubt whether or not we can still be effective messengers from the minority, remember that the only reason that the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, still exists today is because even with a Republican majority in Congress back in 2017 to 2019, voters struck the fear of God into these Republicans at the prospect of them taking away our health care. And so even with unified control of government for the right, still Republicans weren't able to repeal Obamacare. Pressure works even when we don't have power. Now, our job here is difficult because in a normal world, we should be talking about exiting the World Health Organization and rolling back civil rights and firing government employees and trying to end birthright citizenship ad nauseum. But by talking about all of it, we really do risk none of it breaking through, right? You've heard me say before that if everything is a five-alarm fire, then nothing feels like a five-alarm fire. And so in the interest of strategy here and in the interest of not falling victim to Trump's very obvious ploy to get us to respond to every single little thing he does, we have to figure out what actually resonates. And I would argue that what's going to resonate most with those persuadable Americans out there is the fact that Donald Trump is doing all of this to the exclusion of taking action that would actually fulfill his campaign promise of lowering costs for Americans. Like, we've sat here for months and months and months and listened to Trump talk about grocery prices and rent prices and housing prices and egg prices, And yet, what's been done to take on any of these issues? How is eliminating DEI going to lower your grocery costs? How is withdrawal from the WHO going to lower your grocery costs? How is ending birthright citizenship going to lower your grocery costs? It's not. And in the same way that Donald Trump swept into office in 2017 amid promises of a middle-class tax cut, of a jobs boom, of a manufacturing renaissance, of an infrastructure upgrade, of a healthcare plan that was cheaper and more comprehensive, none of that happened. He passed a tax cut for millionaires and billionaires instead. That's it. And yet now he's doing the exact same thing, having promised Americans lower costs, and yet the moment he's actually in power, he's apparently got all this time to attack national health and federal employees and even have his minions like Andy Ogles introducing constitutional amendments to allow him to run for a third term. He's got time for all of that, but nothing about lower costs. Nothing to make groceries cheaper, nothing to make rent cheaper, nothing to make housing cheaper. And in fact, if he gets his way by imposing tariffs on Mexico and Canada, forget cheaper, all those things are going to be much more expensive. And he's already done it with Colombia, having imposed a 25% tariff. And guess what? That's being reciprocated by the Colombian government, which means coffee, roses, flowers, food, fruits are all going to be more expensive because Donald Trump decided to engage in a trade war. How that is lowering costs is beyond me. The reality is that Donald Trump knows he's not going to be able to lower costs. He knows that. And he's known it all along. And so he actually needs to flood the zone because he needs the distraction. He needs us to melt down over the WHO and birthright citizenship because that gives him cover to ignore his own promises to his own supporters. Trump may have been able to game the media and game the left the first time around, but his strategy of flooding the zone is clear by now, and we should have no intention of letting him succeed with it. He's made impossible promises to his supporters that he has no interest on delivering on. We will be here reminding them of it every step of the way. Next up are previews of my interviews with Tommy Vietor and Norm Eisen, but just a quick note, this is the No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen video podcast, which is identical to the No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen audio podcast. On this one podcast, which means one video per week, I have sponsors. So a quick note from our sponsors, and then we'll get into the previews of my interviews with Tommy Vietor and Norm Eisen. No Lie is sponsored by BetterHelp. It's January of 2025. I'm certain that you all come into this new year with goals that you want to hit and changes that you want to make. Life isn't about resolutions that fade away by February. It's about picking up the pen and becoming the author of your own life. And oftentimes, that requires some help. So think of therapy as your editorial partner. I am a huge advocate for therapy. A lot of my friends do it. I do it. The stigma surrounding it is gone. And if you're going to invest in anything this year, it should be yourself and your mental health. You can be a little selfish this year and finally take care of you. BetterHelp is fully online, making therapy affordable and convenient, and it serves over 5 million people worldwide. You'll get access to a diverse network of more than 30,000 credentialed therapists with a wide range of specialties, and you can easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost so that you can find the one that's perfect for you. Write your story with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/nolie to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/nolie. No Lie is sponsored by Acorns. I cannot tell you how much I feel like I'm not making the most of my money. I don't understand the market. In the few instances where I have tried to buy stocks, they have a tendency to only go down, and I don't have the patience or time to learn any of this. Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you and your money goals. And you don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money that you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change. And you can create your Acorns account and start investing in just 5 minutes. And the most important part, Acorns gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track right away. Sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who have already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/BTC or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 2 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/BTC.
How many genders are there, Tommy?
The honest answer, Jesse, I don't care. I'm a libertarian. I don't care.
It's
be
two,
what you want to be. You can be what you want to be, Jesse. I think Joe Biden's decision to pardon his family sends a terrible message to the world. I think the presidential pardon power is far too expansive. I would love to see Congress come together and pass a constitutional amendment that says you cannot pardon yourself, you can't pardon your family, you can't pardon your staff. I think all your listeners would support that.
Why did he pardon his family? Preemptively.
But I also think it sends a terrible message to pardon people who beat the crap out of police officers on live TV.
Yeah, they
doesn't
were
that bother you?
overcharged.
Wait, Daniel Ball assaulted a police officer and threw an explosive device at the Capitol entrance that detonated on 25 cops.
Yeah, they were definitely overcharged. But
Daniel
Trump
Cockney-
ran on pardoning Jan 6ers, and the country voted for him. So in a way, the country voted for these pardons. But let me ask you, why did he pardon Fauci?
I don't know, because Donald Trump put him on an enemies list, and Fauci was a man who was just doing his job in the midst of a pandemic.
I haven't seen this enemies list. Can you show me this list?
Yeah, read Kash Patel's book, The New FBI Director. You should check it out. It's not a long book.
I haven't seen the list yet.
I'm joined now by co-host of Pod Save America, Tommy Vietor. Tommy, that was a clip of you with Fox News' Jesse Waters.
Your best friend. Yeah.
One of your best friends. You just went on his show a couple of days ago. Why did you think that it was important to make an appearance on that show of all shows as we head into the beginning of the Trump era now?
Yeah, I mean, look, part of it was like we were in New York doing some things. They reached out, and I wanted to go on because, I don't know, I think we got to just stop talking to each other as Democrats. It's time to go into some unfriendly places, answer tough questions, push back a little bit. So I did Jesse's show, I did a bunch of other things in New York. It was kind of fun.
You are responsible for filing the very first lawsuit against Donald Trump in court. Can you explain what this lawsuit was based upon?
That is correct. I submitted an application here at State Democracy Defenders Fund, where I'm the executive chair, saying, hey, if DOJ is really all about effectiveness and efficiency, please put me on the DOJ together with my colleague. She was my ethics deputy when I was the White House ethics czar, Ginny Cantor. She's now our chief ethics and anti-corruption counsel. I said, I'm applying to be on the DOJ because I know about conflicts of interest and fighting corruption. And boy, it sure seems like there's a lot of risk in those areas here with this DOJ. How can you have the world's wealthiest man who's heavily regulated by agencies across the government now in charge of slashing the government and potentially affecting or cutting down the agencies that regulate him? And the official response from the DOJ spokesperson was that they don't want me. No Democrats need apply. Well, that's not allowed. You can't pick and choose. Say, oh, I'm going to exclude Democrats from government service. And there's a lot of secrecy surrounding the DOJ. It seems like they're getting a lot of undisclosed advice. We filed this lawsuit for transparency and to say this is not how agencies are supposed to work in American government. What Trump is doing here is dictatorial.
And so this, I guess, relies on hiring discrimination to some degree. Is there any precedent in terms of how this kind of lawsuit might play itself out?
The focus is we filed it leading with the transparency requirement, but a set of other rules under a federal statute known as the Federal Advisory Committee Act that we believe governs some of the DOJ activity that's not being disclosed. And that if that activity is happening, they have to welcome a balanced panel of people, irrespective of partisanship. Yes, these cases have been litigated. These cases have been won. We have a lot at Democracy Defenders. We have a lot more coming. We've filed dozens of FOIA requests to get all the information about this undisclosed activity that's going on. And I won't predict what's coming down the pike. I want to see those documents, and then we'll know for sure. They should call it Dodge, not Doge, because I believe it's dodging accountability, transparency, and doesn't seem to be doing the things it's supposed to be doing.
And of course, to watch the full interviews with Tommy and Norm, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. You can also click the link on the screen to listen to the audio version of this episode, and of course, to see more of my content, the subscribe button's on the screen as well.